Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine. I've just, I am still settling into my grieving process that we will never see Tenet in theaters. It's never going to happen. And yeah, it's a loss, but we'll survive.
It is a loss. It is a loss. I saw that news earlier today, and that once again, not only did they decide to push it back, they just said, F it. We're just going to say to be determined, postpone indefinitely here in the United States. But I guess, maybe we can see a bootleg copy when it airs, when it drops in theaters overseas.
See, that pisses me off even more.
Yeah.
It should be all or nothing. It shouldn't be this thing where this part of the world gets it, but this part doesn't, because with technology, spoilers are going to leak. Oh, yeah. And whatever you do see is going to be the crummiest version. And those films that he produces, it's all about that experience.
It really is.
So honestly, I would have been even fine had they just said it's postponed to indefinitely, because newsflash, all movies right now are postponed indefinitely. They have quote-unquote release dates, but no one is taking them seriously.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And I know I saw where I think the head of the Trade Association for Movie Theaters was interviewed this evening, and he was talking about how in some places, some theaters could open because, their COVID numbers aren't as bad and stuff. And a lot of theaters have put in a lot of safety precautions and other things. And in some states, they've even sued to reopen. But at the end of the day, how many people are really going to feel comfortable going to a theater at this point? Mm-hmm. And also, I know there has been some drive-through theaters reopening, and there's been a resurgence of that platform to see things. So there's that, and then some people were like, well, can't just Nolan get over it and just release it to video? And you're right. His films really are designed to be a true theatrical experience versus some of these straight to Netflix films that we see sometimes, and like, for example, Old Guard. But
yeah.
You just can't. You really need to experience his films on the big screen. So I don't think he's being pretentious that way or anything like that. I think he put a lot of work into the craft, and it should be experienced as such.
Yeah, no, I agree. Honestly, if they're doing this half of the world receives it now, and then this half wait, just put it on DVD. Put it on some kind of streaming service. I blame WB for not being as proactive as Disney is, where Disney has a streaming service. So had this movie been under them, I bet you that it would have dropped on Disney Plus.
I don't know.
They would be in the talks to drop it, because you can always do a re-release. Get the money while you can. Everything is starting to slow down. Everyone is hungry for more entertainment. And so even if you drop it on a streaming service, I understand that's not going to do much for overall box office. However, you're going to earn at least some of it. You're going to get attention probably onto other films. It's annoying to me how I know this movie's going to get spoiled for me. And I'm at the point, I've only seen one trailer. Have no intention of seeing anything else, because I personally think trailers ruin movies. And I don't want this movie ruined. And I have a feeling it will be, because of this stupid release date plan that they have.
Yeah, because I think they'll probably, but even with that, I think in China, I think they have like a strict 2-hour limit for their films. So who knows? It may not even be able to be released there at this point. So, but I think
it's under 2 hours. They already confirmed that.
Yeah, it's
one of his shortest movies.
Yeah, it's true. I thought it was about 2:20 or something like that, though.
No, okay. I saw it was like real short.
Okay. I
Like
know it's
now,
one of the shortest ones, but I thought it was still just I thought it was impossible for Christopher Nolan to make a film under 2 hours.
no, because Dunkirk was really short.
That's true. That's true.
And The Following, I think, was really short, which is
Yeah.
his first movie. But this isn't a Christopher Nolan podcast, and we've beat this about as much as he has. So moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Other release dates. Falcon and Winter Soldier delayed, but WandaVision is still on time for December. I don't know how to feel about this because I remember about a year ago, I said I was looking more forward to WandaVision than I was Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
And then the news about WandaVision started to stop. And I felt as if there was more hype around Winter Soldier and Falcon. Mm-hmm. So now that they've kind of shifted, I'm a bit disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, it was supposed to come out next month, and I think they were pretty close to finishing up the season. So it is disappointing that that they didn't even consider maybe dropping some of it, and then just once they could finish filming I think the remaining 2 or so episodes that they had left, at least give us something. Because
right.
Because I think you're right. I was getting more hyped, especially as I started seeing some of the production stills and news about the Falcon and Winter Soldier. I was really looking forward to, like, okay, August. Okay, we have a void after Comic-Con to fill to enjoy the end of the summer. But of course, now it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah, but a few months from now, after they run their campaign for WandaVision, it'll be Falcon who, Winter Soldier who.
True.
Because
true.
I think maybe they're doing this on purpose. They don't want people going into this with high expectations. They want it to be fresh. They want people to find it and embrace it. And I honestly still think people underestimate it. I understand how everything was shown and the cheesiness, but ever since somebody pointed out how Vision turned black and white when he got killed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking at some of the trailers and you notice some are in color, some are in black and white, I think there's going to be a lot of layers here. So hopefully they pull it off. They probably will. By Christmas, I'm just going to be desperate for some kind of spectacle.
Yeah. Because it's like you said earlier, at this point, release dates are nothing. So at least we know WandaVision is been finished. We will at least have The Mandalorian season 2 to hold us over from October through November, and of course we have The Boys during September and first part of October. So thankfully we have some other things, but yeah, that the cupboard is starting to get a little sparse.
Yeah, little sparse. Speaking about things coming our way this weekend, San Diego Comic-Con will be at home. And, this is not news to me. I've always experienced this Comic-Con through home.
Yep. Yeah, that's true.
I love it that way. It's going to be interesting, though, considering a lot of the panels and a lot of the fun, at least for your average person who doesn't go to the events but does follow the news. I think it's all about release dates. It's all about casting news, updates on the projects, about the films, your MCU, your DCEU. But this year, I don't know what they're going to pull. It's kind of hard because there's so much that we were expecting to get this year that has been put on the back burner. And we can only watch the Black Widow trailers so many times before the entire story is going to get ruined for us. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting what everyone focuses on, what is announced, what isn't announced, and what the overall reaction will be.
Yeah, yeah, because one of the cool things about at least even though we like you said, we're used to watching it at home, but there was a spontaneity to it because it was, yeah, obviously real time. People were tweeting out of Hall H about things going on. From what I understand, with this upcoming event this week, it's about 350 panels. I mean, it's going to be, all of them are going to be on YouTube, but most of the content is going to be pre-recorded, and so it's I wonder, that spontaneity will be different now in that, um, man, I think we'll still be able to get the breaking news and all of those kind of things, but it'll feel like it'll feel like watching a scripted program on YouTube versus getting that visceral, like, oh, whenever the tweets drop and that first trailer drops. And so it'll be interesting to see how they integrate the pre-recorded items and sync them up with releasing it to the wider social media realm, given that we won't have that give and take from the generic audience, and instead of just be a hosted event.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the last bit of news is the Beyonce Black is King trailer dropped today for her new visual album.
Yeah.
It's a visual album.
It's a visual album, like I think it's about an hour and 25 minute visual album, inspired by her role in Lion King, and of course using this platform, I think, with just so many things and that's going on in the world right now. I think she was using this to drop some new content, and hell, it's like I was looking at the stats on the YouTube official release from Disney, and it was like close to 2 million views just on the trailer that dropped over the weekend. So it's just obviously she is an industry in and of herself, and I think Jay-Z's part of this, and Pharrell and some others as well. So
I don't think either of them. You put their names on it, maybe you get 1 million. You put Beyonce on it and only Beyonce on it, you're gonna get millions and millions of people, because it's Beyonce. Like it doesn't say Beyonce and Jay-Z featuring Pharrell. It just says Beyonce.
Beyonce, exactly. This is her thing, and I mean, it reminds me of when Lemonade dropped a few years ago, and so of course now she did sign a big deal with Disney, and so this is, I think, part of that, and it drops July 31st, and it will be it'll be an event, I am sure. Just like Hamilton was his first.
I was just gonna say, it's just smart. Disney, say what you want about them, but for whatever reason, there's a reason why they have bled millions, billions of dollars through COVID, and yet they still are making such smart decisions about the content they're releasing on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. I mean, to get Hamilton rights and to release it over 4th of July weekend of all things.
Yeah.
And now to conclude the month with Beyonce, who, Lemonade was huge, but Lemonade didn't have this platform. I can only imagine what this is going to do. It's just smart. Yeah. I really wish they could just get their crap together and figure out Winter Soldier and Falcon.
Exactly.
Whatever. Oh, man. All right. So, okay, we do have some things to talk about, because we got to cover Doom Patrol and then 2 episodes of Stargirl. So let's first head to space with Dorothy, Niles, and Cliff. Honestly, I was thinking about it right before logging on, and this week's episode of Doom Patrol was fine. Yeah. I think it resolved a lot it was needed. It's not wasted time because they needed to deal with the fallout from last week's episodes, especially with Jane and what happened to her and Dorothy and Larry and Rita. But I also there is not that much where when getting ready tonight, I was thinking to myself, oh, I can't wait to talk to Will about this, this, and this. And usually I'm like that when we talk Doom Patrol.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Whenever I was watching the episode, whenever it ended, and even while I was watching it, one of the things that kept coming to my mind was there's a lot of threads that they're setting up here for the closeout of the remainder of the season, because it was, you're right. I mean, they did have to follow up from that ending that we had last week, where we had Flaming Katie and Baby Doll. The big question: did Candlemaker kill them? And of course we see the after effects of Jane when the episode opens, with her basically all in candle wax from the what transpired there. But you're right. If it did feel like a bridge episode in many ways, and the great thing and again, what makes this series work so well is even when they do have a bridge episode, it still hits the right beats, and like you said, it doesn't feel like a wasted episode. But it to me, that was my sort of initial takeaway from it after I finished watching it.
Yeah. I think there was also a lot of space, pun intended, in this episode, where we got through a few episodes where there were a lot of pairs, there were a lot of teamwork, and then in this episode, yes, Cliff and Niles go on their adventure, but everyone else was kind of isolated. I mean, we had Rita learning about the real our town that she will be performing in, which, surprise alert, is basically a retelling of events from season 1.
Yeah.
And it kind of, and then we find out, well, this is needed because Rita really starts to understand what is her mental block and why her mother is still preventing her from really embracing her powers and becoming who she is meant to be now in her current state. And I thought that was a good scene at the end. It took a while to get there, though.
It did.
But I understood it when we had that moment, and she was kind of understanding from a fellow actor what that character is all about and what really the blob lady wants at the end of the day.
Yeah. But also, it was speaking of the blob lady, it did show the growth of Rita, even though she's understanding the mental block as far as that keeps her from fully realizing her powers. We have seen some growth in Rita, though, because she had gotten that dressing that that dressing down or of hearing what other people thought of her before, she would have completely blobbed out in hearing all those things that the other actress was saying in that moment. So I think we are seeing advances with the various characters as far as them healing from some of the earlier scars that they've had that have been inflicted by Niles Calder.
Right. I agree. I think this season proves that Rita has experienced arguably the most growth, especially when we compare her to Larry, because I love Larry.
I do too.
And I thought the initial episodes, everything to do with his family, was really interesting. We spent a lot of season 1 where it was more about him coming to terms with his sexuality on top of the monster that he's become. But this season, there's something about it where now that we've reconciled with with his family, it didn't work for me this episode where I I was like, okay, Space Lady and Larry, got it, but too bad he doesn't like women. So
Yeah.
I don't know where we're gonna go with this. Oh, she has a negative spirit too. It's just that I didn't. It fell flat for me, if I'm being honest. It just didn't work for me. I got it, but I feel maybe I hold the writers to a higher standard. I just thought that they could have done that more creatively, when really it felt almost like we need Dorothy and Niles to end up in space, so we're going to create this, and we need to do something with Larry, so we're going to say that these people have negative spirits too.
Yeah, well, but I think, but again, to your point about them never wasting a scene or wasting a show. So Valentina Vostok, who also, I think she did serve a purpose, and one of the things you added in your show notes is like, how was Larry different, and what was the different thing between the two of them? And so clearly this episode explores how she started out that way, as far as the learning how to come to terms with her negative spirit. And interestingly enough, in the comic book, this character actually plays a pretty pivotal role, because, and I don't know if they'll integrate this into this season or future seasons, but Larry is presumed dead, and the negative spirit that he had and that inhabits Larry goes over to Valentina, and turns out Larry's negative spirit, the negative man, was very, very toxic, and she basically became Negative Woman and took his place on the Doom Patrol. And whereas she was able, her negative spirit, they were able to harmonize and the radiation not harm her. The same effects that happened to Larry ends up happening to Valentina, and she ends up wearing the bandages as well. So, she goes off to find, at the end of the episode, I guess she was going to just check in with things back in Mother Russia, but I have a feeling we're going to, especially knowing, from the comic, the role that character plays, I could see her showing up again, like Flex has, Mentalo, and helping the team out, and especially if something does end up happening to Larry, because the Bureau Normancy is still out there, and they've already was able to almost capture him again with through his son. So there's any number of ways that they could weave the story from the comics into the show, and then of course was it Spies and Zip? I mean, I guess they determined they have some spores in them, and so again, I mean, will these spores end up? And they just left them kind of just an open grave. So
yeah, that was dumb.
yeah. So I was sort of like, you're leaving an open grave. They have some spores. Now, could these spores be used to help Niles, or is Niles going to use them to his advantage, given that he's the duplicitous son of a bitch that he is, or will Candlemaker? Could it be?
So
yeah. So there's little things that maybe not be utilized this season, but I think they set the stage for some stories that they'll probably revisit down the road.
I think the big difference, though, is I'm not familiar with the comics. So for me, how this was written, it didn't work without any outside knowledge of the Easter eggs or the potential tie-ins, which, based on your understanding and knowledge about the books, it makes sense now. It makes a lot more sense. And so I guess, to me, if they were really setting it up for that, I would have would like to see more. I don't know where I'm going with this,
No.
but it didn't work, and I think a lot of that had to do with just me not having knowledge about the books and who these characters could be and how they could be used. I do think you're spot on with the spores. That was just dumb.
Yeah.
But again, you have these characters who are wrapping up their own storylines, and still coming to terms with things, which I just wish there was a little bit more progression.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, so that's already two characters who are off on their own, and then we have Vic, who we see him and Ronnie still in their honeymoon period.
Yeah.
And he learns more about her tech. Not only is it Star Labs tech, but it is also, they didn't do the best job, because they're the military, on ripping it out of her, which when they did that procedure, they left behind some parts and they left some leaks. And now she's basically dying from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah, she is dying from the inside out. So I with Vic and this story with Ronnie and how fast he has like fallen for her, and I think about when he called Silas and was, Silas was like, I see what's going on here, son. Trying to get some fatherly advice, and also Vic was trying to see if he could get Star Labs tech to help cure Ronnie of the leak within her system because of all the tech being ripped out. It again highlighted how the very complex relationship between Vic and his father is, but also how his father was just like, just watch yourself, don't fall so fast that you lose perspective, and so, because Vic did fall pretty hard, pretty fast for Ronnie, and so I thought it was a good warning. Now will Vic listen? Probably not. I mean, after all, Ronnie told him not to hack into the system, and then he was like, he just did it anyway. So, because and because of that, I mean, as we know, I mean, every action has a consequence. So, even in trying to save her, he may end up creating more problems for the both of them. And Silas just may be correct, and will tell Vic, "I told you so."
Right. I mean, let's face it. Silas's advice, it came too late. He already got his fatherly advice from Cliff during the previous episode. Partners in crime.
Yep.
Stone and steel for life. So he didn't really need it. I am glad that they not only brought back Ronnie, but they also are leading us down this trail more into Star Labs. And I love that line from Silas that I had to get the money to make you possible. Mm-hmm. And so if Vic really had what I call empathy, that would trouble him a bit more. And I wonder if Ronnie ultimately dies at the end of the season, or maybe in the future, if he goes back to that moment and really understands that how she, in a way, was a sacrifice for him, just because if his dad didn't get that money after selling the tech, then he wouldn't still be alive. He would have died during the accident.
Right.
So it was a really good tie-in, and that's something I like about this show is they will drop a lot of exposition because they do some wacky crap, but along with the expedition, there's some really subtle hints of potential seeds and threads that can be pulled later on. So as much as this felt kind of like, oh, there's Vic, when can we get back to space? I could see the potential of where they're going to go with this for the rest of the season.
Definitely.
All right. So, speaking about Cliff.
Yeah.
Cliff gets some one-on-one time with Niles. He really deserved it. And Cliff is interesting because I never know what version we're gonna get of Cliff every episode.
Yeah.
We don't know if he's gonna get high on X, if he's gonna have daydreams about being in a 70s cop show, if he's gonna, I don't know, do something stupid, run
Yep.
after Jane. And this episode, he almost played the straight man, where
He did.
everyone else around him was going insane, having their own adventures, and he just found himself following Niles into a spare spaceship.
Yeah. Yeah, it just happened to have. What else is in that garage? I tell you.
I mean, like, seriously, you did this, and yet you couldn't make this any better?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like,
But-
and the thing is, even the spaceship was like a cheat because he ended up having to use, devil magic to like even make it work.
Yep. It's Niles. He is resourceful. I'll give him that. I will give him that. He is resourceful, although his methods are questionable. And yet Cliff just follows after him, finds himself locked in the spaceship, going after Dorothy. And we had some good moments. I mean, you had a father-to-father moment between Cliff and Niles, where Cliff realizes, as much as he's frustrated and very angry at Niles for everything he took away with his own daughter, Cliff is also empathetic to him because he understands feeling so helpless while raising a kid.
Yep, he does. It was very, I was watching that, and I realized that this series, yes, it's a superhero show, but it's just such a dynamic character study, and it's just a good morality tale about various situations that people go through, and and like you said, you never know what Cliff is going to show up, but this Cliff, because he had the empathy, even though he doesn't have any tactile feel or whatever, but he definitely has that empathy for. It wasn't so much for, I thought, it was just, he, like you said, he experienced that with his own situation with his own daughter, but then he confronts me. He talks to Niles about this, and then when he thinks about going into space, he realized that I like Dorothy, and I thought about how Cliff has that same kind of dynamic with Jane as far as
exactly.
And so this season, where first season he was paired off with Jane to help her grow and deal with trying to reconciling all the cat people in the underground, personalities in the underground. This season is now working that with Dorothy, because especially when whenever he gets on the ship and they go presumably to the moon, and he walks out and finds her and has that real heart-to-heart moment with her, as far as with Cliff, and she's Dorothy's really feeling sad about losing Manny and her other imaginary friends. It was he gave that real emotional selflessness as a father versus Niles' very selfish motivations. To me, it seems to me, as far as why he's trying to protect Dorothy.
Right. I don't think that this is the only thing, or what this season is about for Cliff as a character, because it was one moment when last season it felt as if Jane and him were paired up every other episode at least.
Yeah.
I think it's still about Niles and and Dorothy. And in this episode, Cliff really had to step in and have that moment where he did the exact same thing that he did when he first encountered Jane. It was empathy. It was, I'm just going to listen. I'm not even going to talk. I'm going to listen. And that's something that Niles doesn't do, because when Cliff looks at Dorothy, he doesn't just see a young girl. He sees a thing, if you will, an experiment, a product of Niles and everything he gets into and all of this stuff. And by the end of the conversation, he then starts to understand, no, this is a young girl who is also a somebody's daughter, who honestly has more powers and all of these capabilities, but she's not mature. She did what she did to Dorothy was because she is a kid.
Right.
And a kid who lost something that was close to her, and he can empathize with that, with everything he's lost. So I think it had to be someone from the team to have that conversation with Dorothy. It couldn't be Niles, because not only is Niles her dad, but Niles is also the closest to normal out of all of them.
Yeah.
And so there isn't that like freak heart to heart that these, and that's why these characters are all a family together. It's because at the end of the day, Niles is there, but Niles is still not part of Doom Patrol the way all of these other characters are, because Doom Patrol is a byproduct of Niles and his experiments.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but and Cliff did his best. He got the girl back on the ship, and Niles, in his selfishness, kicks him out.
Yep. Yeah. I was just like, what the?
Saw that coming. Saw it coming. I was looking at it. I'm like, why is he there and Cliff's all the way over there? I think he's gonna get kicked back to Earth.
Yep.
All right, we gotta keep it moving, because we do gotta get to Stargirl, and we do have one more character to cover, Jane in the underground. Or is it Miranda? Because the one big thing that happens is really this idea that by the end of the episode, we learn what quote unquote happens to the personalities. They get dropped down the well, which we learned about during the previous season, and everyone assumes they're dead. But in the reality, and what we learned from Miranda, is when you get dropped in the well, eventually you do resurface and you become reborn. But the question is, do you become reborn in a different way? Because Jane's whole point is the protector and the little girl are aspects of Kay's personality that is now lost.
Right.
Is now burned off. And what Kay in particular, the little girl in particular, was one of the few personalities who trusted men. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because she was one of the few. Yeah, I guess Baby Doll was the one who trusted men, and so I mean, so with that aspect of the personalities gone. And Jane went to Kay to get guidance too, and so will they be even more protective of Kay, given that, and not trust Niles, because basically the Niles, I guess the Baby Doll personality was basically like the surrogate daughter for Niles, and so now that that's gone. And the rest, and Miranda is back in control, and we do know something happened to Miranda where she did have a traumatic event that forced her to throw herself in the well. Will that lead to them not trusting Niles anymore and protecting Kay, Jane protecting Kay even more so, that because they know how duplicitous Niles is. And also, I mean, will they even could they potentially use the well as a way to help Niles?
Yeah.
There's that possibility out there also. So, I mean, there was just a lot to mine with that, and also just how the personalities view death as a construct within the underground. That that's not a finite life. Is not a finite thing that you could be reborn into something else.
Yeah, which makes sense, because I honestly, I didn't. I figured they were gonna do something where they eventually come back, but I was also not really figuring it would end up as a reborn reincarnation thing, because we are dealing with the underground, which is in itself a construct of personalities and
right.
and an aspect of a human's brain, essentially. So
yeah.
No, I like where they were headed and what this will set up for the final few episodes. And that's really all I can say about this episode is it's a bridge episode, like where it's headed.
Yeah.
Let's just continue down that path.
Yeah, 3 episodes left. It's been a fast but so far excellent season.
All right. So, the Brainwave saga.
Yes. Yeah, I am really, really, really liking this series. I every week it just delivers. It's such a very, for me at least, very good way of good storytelling, good twist. They actually went there. It's so refreshing to see that, especially given I was worried whenever it was a teen-based, lead, that I thought it could have fallen down some bad trope traps. But so far, I've really been enjoying the season.
Yeah, this show is growing on me. I really need Mike to be able to handle the staff, and let's just call this Starboy.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I still, Courtney, at one point during the Brainwave Part 2, Brainwave Jr., she says, "It's my birthright."
Yeah.
Okay. This is why I have a problem with Courtney.
Yeah, I still have a problem. Yeah, as much as I love the show, I mean, Courtney's my least favorite character.
Thank you. And that's a problem. It's so funny to me how I agree with you. This show, it does take the risks and it does go to places where you do not expect it to. And we will get there because something happens. But she just stands out like a Thor. And honestly, in Brainwaves Jr., the whole team was getting to me, where I think there is still some issues that the adolescents, and I get it. You kind of, they're the underdogs because they're young. They don't have the experience, and they're going up against the ISA, who are the older people, more experienced, and who have done this before, and so they really want to drive that on. But honestly, they just come off as stupid. There's something about the decision-making process that just irritates me.
Yeah. Well, it's that underdeveloped prefrontal lobe.
Yeah, and maybe it's not just the fact that they're young kids, because Mike is the youngest kid on the show, and he says some of the smartest shit.
Yeah, he does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's something about it where the choices that they end up making, it's just so wrong. Or it's not even wrong. It's kind of like here's a good example. And Brainwave Jr., which I think is the better of the 2 episodes for obvious reasons, but you have to have the first part to really get there. They're in the tunnels, and all of a sudden the goggles malfunction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she has been in the tunnels before,
Right.
where she lost reception. Why is this new information?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, I think so. I think that's what's so endearing about the other members of the team, in that they're all rookies. They're finding their way, and I think that's what's so refreshing about this show. Where, I mean, I mean, obviously with other shows, the characters get their powers, but they've gotten them when they're adults, and so they're dealing with adult issues and stuff. Here, these are teenagers, and they're dealing with teenage problems and trying to just find their way. And but it's done in a way that, yes, it's like, hello, you were just in the tunnels just a few episodes back. You should realize that the things don't work there. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, it's believable that they would forget that. And yeah, I think it is.
Beth is the smartest one on that team, and it was
True.
her. She was surprised by it. That's why it's not believable for me.
Well, see, but if they were like all realized that, they remembered this and knew that what was going to happen, to me that would undermine the fact that they are teens and they're still learning the superhero game.
Oh, I'm not don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining about everyone else's reaction. I'm complaining about Beth's reaction.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
First one on the team, and then she goes down with her goggles and immediately freaks out because suddenly she can't hear the guy, and it's like, dude, you did this 2 days ago.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, she of the team members, I could definitely see our man, which he's a single man and focused on Solomon Grundy, doing something like that versus Beth. That's true.
Yeah. He and he's starting to get to me because he makes, but I also feel the way his character was introduced, all of his bad decisions make sense. Mm-hmm. Yolanda too, it's hard because her episode where you really understood what happened to her and how the Yolanda we met in episode 1 came to be, and that was a result of Henry's action, you had all this sympathy. And so my biggest struggle with that is there's been a lot of stuff that has happened since that episode. Mm-hmm. So it's hard for me to watch how mean she is to Henry.
Yeah.
Just dismissive and unforgiving. And so I wish, my one critique is I wish that episode had been closer together to this arc. Mm-hmm. So it would be more prevalent, that pain, because you really, going back, you do see it. You do see how she's not only, it's not that it just hurt her. Her relationship with her parents are completely screwed up.
Yeah.
She's isolated. She's practically been disowned, and he doesn't get that. But I do appreciate how that was interwoven and needed throughout this episode to really to have that redemption that at the end of the day he did get, but it came with a sacrifice.
It did come with a sacrifice, and speaking of sacrifice and other things that we learn, I mean, like, to go back to the first episode, Brainwave itself, there were several points that, whenever the series first started, and we told everyone, watch the DC Universe version versus the CW version, because there are some key plot points that were cut, that probably going to get cut out, that would come back to make sense further in the story. And a couple of them, was the whole Brainwave, how he, the videos, because we did, there was a bit of the scene of the videotapes in Henry Sr.'s closet that got trimmed in the CW version. So, like, whenever in the first episode, when Henry stumbled upon Junior stumbled upon them and started watching them and learning more about how his father started to manifest his powers. And I like the way they did the origin story for Brainwave in the first episode, and showing that same parallel path with Henry, because it really did set up a better story for me, seeing, they're going on that same path, and then and things could have easily had turned where Henry Jr. could have easily end up just like his father. I mean, he did at the end of episode Brainwave. He ends up reading the lawyer's thoughts and realizes he's trying to cheat him out of his money, and he does kill the guy.
Yeah, and it's not so much he ends up like him. It's more that throughout the course of the origin story, you really understand how this gift, this power, is a curse. Mm-hmm. And with that curse comes this poison into his mind and this belief, because when you and they execute it perfectly, to your point, to hear everyone's thoughts. You can't just say, I want to only hear good thoughts.
Right.
Because people do think good things. Mm-hmm. But we're also very negative. Yeah. We also have we have both a devil and an angel on our shoulder.
Yep.
And I have to tell you, when times are rough, you really start listening to the devil half the time. Yeah. You say things, you think things. It doesn't mean, it's almost like a relief. Some people talk to themselves because they just need to get things out there. That doesn't mean that they actually hate this person or really will follow through. But you can see how a mind reader, that would warp them and their perception of reality. So I think they set that up, and then they also, we all know I don't like Courtney. I think she's not the worst character. Will's words, not mine. But she was probably the best written in the first episode of this arc.
Yeah. Because
everything she says to Henry is the truth and is actually good guidance and good wisdom. And it's as if she aged 16 years or something.
Yeah.
And it really, and you see it, how it's not taken that way initially, but by the end of the second episode, everything that Courtney said is right. And he understands it. And that's why he makes that decision at the end to sacrifice himself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point. And I know I'm sometimes very critical of Courtney, but you are right. Her conversations with them and trying to get him to team up with the rest of the new JSA. It did, these two chapters in this story did work well together because of that setup that they did in the Brainwave Part 1 episode. Yeah. And then also just, close, thinking about the Brainwave Part 1 episode and how they start interweaving in some of the other pieces of why Pat is in Blue Valley, why the janitor was, recognized Stripe C at the end of the Shiv episodes, and some of Pat's, background as far as with the Knights, the first team that he was part of. Gosh, I'm blanking on the name now. The Seven Soldiers of Victory, I think, is what they call them, and how that, again, tying all the things from earlier in the season, those little glimpses of things like the map that was leading to Blue Valley, which definitely gets us to, starts us off in episodes 2 with Brainwave Jr. how Pat and Barbara meet. Those, all those little nuggets are. I'm liking the way they're pulling all those various threads together, as the season progresses, and also the simple fact of, as far as choices and decision making. Pat constantly trying to, as the season has progressed, tell Barbara what's going on, and of course Courtney kept hushing him, but they do end up finding the staff. Barbara does end up finding the staff, and that moment was like, saw it coming, but carrying it forward to Brainwave Jr., it was just some genuine anger and genuine distrust that they didn't just solve it all by the end of the episode with Pat and Barbara,
Right.
which was a very again, that's why I liked about the storytelling and why I liked that they went there. They did have the lies blow up in their face, but also we just didn't make it all better. Yeah.
Courtney's lies.
Yeah.
Courtney's lies. Because that again does not. It's very irritating when Pat is the adult and yet Courtney just continues to push this other narrative as if no one else can know, only her and Pat. And it's like, why?
Why? Yeah.
What you're doing this because of your who you perceive to be your father, which is another thing. So Courtney, you're gonna tell your mom, hey, this is Starman.
Yeah.
Here's 500 photos of him. She's gonna look at them and then tell you Starman was not my father, and oh yeah, he's not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go with Barbara. I would hope she would remember who she slept with.
I would hope so.
And what they looked like.
Yeah.
Which they left that thread. We did see an email get sent to Sam.
Yep.
And we don't know what the response was. We don't know if it was declined. It looked like a reply message.
Yeah.
So we found out that. We also found out some interesting lineage about Starman himself, where it turns out, and what really allows Henry to get pushed and torn apart and kind of come full circle is this idea that Brainwave comes out of a coma, can't remember the past 10 years.
Right.
10 years ago is when the ISA killed the JSA.
Mm-hmm.
And during that, Icicle kills Starman, who happens to be the brother of Brainwave, or Brainwave's wife.
Yep.
Who then wants her own vengeance, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan. Now, okay, I don't know if it was completely Brainwave who killed his wife, because the moment that they bring up the memories and she was ice cold, I'm immediately, damn it, Jordan.
Yep.
We get it. Your wife died. Not everyone's wife has to die.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm there has to be more to that, especially if Henry was correct in his assumption that there was this push and pull between Jordan and Brainwave's wife for his soul, essentially.
Yeah.
Whether he'd be good or bad, and ultimately she lost, and he became this henchman and shut off basically any affection or love that he could have towards his son.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting with the 10 years because I know, it was like, because he loses 10 years whenever he went to the coma after fighting Stargirl, and the initial fight was 10 years ago. So, I there's definitely some manipulation there where Jordan, used that knowledge that Starman's brother was Henry's wife as leverage of something to keep Brainwave in the ISA, and we've seen that early on in the season, like with the magician. So I mean, and and I mean, also, and, not only Jordan, but Jordan's parents. I mean, they were some shady old people. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
because whenever in the first episode when they came over to have dinner with the Dugans and give that Norwegian prayer, and I think if I recall, there was some lines of like vengeance or something like that in it. And then of course Barbara, being very wise, fast forward to episode 2, Brainwave Jr., and records them whenever they're speaking Norwegian and was able to translate what they said. It definitely it definitely shows not only Jordan has clearly evil intents, but his parents are just equally engaged with all of this, and poor Cameron is sort of the odd kid left out who he clearly has no idea what's going on. And
Cameron even on the show, does he get like a guest spot every time he shows up? Because this kid maybe has 1 or 2 lines. All he does is sit in the corner of the room, make eyes at Courtney. God knows why, because we've never seen a really good interaction between them.
Right.
This is not shippable material, Will.
I know you can't make a video yet out of this.
I will. That'll be the day if I ever make a ship video out of this, because this is not what shipping is. This is not a romantic arc, and I just see it. I see Courtney killing Jordan, Cameron finding out, Cameron wanting vengeance, but I liked you, blah blah blah, and yeah,
right.
You liked her because she smiled at you in the hallway one day, kid. I don't understand.
Yeah. I don't get it either. It's nothing there, because even with the dinner, they they had this weird kind of hug, it's just like I'm just not feeling it. And you're right. I think if they're trying to set up a romantic arc between the two of them, it's fair. That's probably one area where it has been underdeveloped.
Which is shocking, because for whatever reason, I'm getting real vibes that they're gonna put our man and Yolanda together, Rick and Yolanda together.
Yeah.
Next season. I mean, that's writing on the wall.
It is. That's definitely writing on the wall, and and other writing on the wall is Sam Curtis line is another one that again blowing up Courtney's idea of Starman being her father. Because again, that was one of those cuts that was made early with the very first episode, and when we talked about that, I was like, oh, they made those cuts between the CW show and the original, and of course now fast forward we get Sam Curtis, and of course Sam Curtis in the comics is indeed Courtney's father, but he's not Starman. He was just like part of some other underworld group, and he was like kind of the low man on the totem pole for it. So there's the other piece that's going to eventually, that other shoe's going to drop on that, as far as Courtney finding out the truth and how that's going to how that's going to impact her relationship with Pat, because Pat has he tried to discourage the thoughts of Sam Sylvester being her dad, but he either she's just not willing to listen or he's not being forceful enough and trying to.
I don't think the writers are going to go there. Yeah. I think actually the writers are going to not have it play out the way other shows would, where it has this big impact on her relationship with Pat. But she's actually able to take a step back and realize she isn't entitled to this. Mm-hmm. This isn't her birthright.
Yeah.
She, for some reason, and that's only for the staff to show her and lead her, the staff chose her, and there's something else, and hopefully it'll make her stop being such a liar.
Yeah,
it'll make her be mature and actually be a big sister to Mike.
Yeah,
and get her leadership role on. I mean, the one thing I'll say about Cameron is, honestly, in a way, it's a good thing this whole love thing isn't working out, because that would make her more stereotypical
Yeah.
And we've seen that before. So I think she's got a lot to do on her own before we get there. We are running out of time. At the end of this episode, in this arc, we see it. Brainwave ultimately kills his son because there can only ever be one Brainwave on a TV show. And they end the episode with a very slowed down version of Robin's Dancing on My Own, which I still think is a weird song choice, but
Yeah.
One of the kids had to die.
It had to. Yeah. But it gives, you know, I will say one of the kids had to die, and it had to, you know, but I think it was necessary because, I mean, Courtney learned a little bit from the death of her other classmate, the magician's son.
Too much credit.
But I think the other team members needed that to realize that, hey, this shit's for real. And
I like how they set it up more as a team experience than a Courtney thing.
Yeah.
That is it for us tonight. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will and Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. We will be back on the weekend for a special San Diego Comic-Con. Hopefully a live stream. Still working that out. Will is definitely going to tweet out the details, so be on the lookout. And you can find those details on our Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, geek out. You're welcome.